Yo, how's everyone doing? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Darren. I also go by Fusion, and I cannot lie, I'm excited to get into today's video discussion. As some of you may know, tomorrow or today, depending on when I post this, Tekken 8 is going to be announcing a brand new character. There's been a lot of speculation by the community of who or what is going to be, whether it's a brand new original character or if it's going to be a guest character. Me in particular, I have a good feeling it's going to be a guest character, but we'll get more into that in this video. But I think it's super fun getting to these type of discussions. That's the sole purpose of this video. I kind of want to talk about some predictions that I think are very high, have a high chance of being in Tekken to a very low chance. So before we get into that, for any of my returning viewers who are curious of where I've been and why I've been posting, I'll definitely get into that at another time. But other than that, let's get straight into this video. Okay, now let's start with my very first prediction, and I think that character is going to be
Akira Yuki.
I think there's a high chance. I had to kind of break it down in my mind. I believe he was also requested by the community as well, but I think by the pure nature of what Akira is, right, the more grounded martial arts style of fighting, it just fits with Tekken's atmosphere. And I think that's the core thing that's been missing with some of the recent Tekken 8. Like, don't get me wrong, I still have been enjoying and love the game. Like, that's not going to change. But I see, a lot of discussion with the community as far as, Tekken not being Tekken. So I think Akira, in that sense, would be a perfect placement for that. Very grounded, and he would fit right in to Tekken. Okay. Some of the other reasons why I think Akira will be joining us tomorrow is because Virtua Fighter has been announced in the last year or so, and some other leaks of some kind have been also, surfacing. And I think it would make a lot of sense to kind of have those two coincide, right? You announce, the Akira Virtua Fighter collab, while also maybe show a trailer of their next game coming out as well. I think from a marketing side, it just makes a lot of sense. I think it's a win-win. It fits, and a lot of people would be happy with this choice. I'm not a huge fan of the Virtua Fighter universe, but I think it would fit right in. I think some of you guys could probably also choose some other Virtua Fighter characters that may fit just right in. But that's kind of the main idea of why I think he has a high chance of being the next Tekken 8 character. Okay, going into my second prediction.
You there, Leon?
Yeah.
It's the main man himself, Leon Kennedy. So I will have to say I'm not exactly sure of his chances of being in Tekken, but I think a lot of people would be very happy with his pick for many reasons, right? He's a very cool, iconic character, not only in gaming, but just in the culture. A lot of people are aware of Leon. Even me, I'm not even too familiar with Resident Evil, but over the years, it's hard to not know who Leon is. So after playing the games myself, Resident Evil 4 in particular, I kind of understood the hype and the love for him. So the reason why I chose Leon Kennedy as an option is because of our previous game, Tekken 7, right? We had a character, Negan, from the Walking Dead series. That was totally left field. None of us, and I feel like none of us, when I say, like, we did not know or would have predicted that would have happened. Someone from a TV series making it into our game, not a chance. And so the core similarities as far as, them fighting off these disease infected, creatures, humans, essentially, I think it just fits. They have a similar aesthetic. So just in that regard, it just makes a lot of sense to me, considering that, Resident Evil Requiem came out in the last couple of months or so. I think it fits, right? You have your game come out, it does what it does, and you kind of roll over into expanding maybe into the fighting game area. Look at Fatal Fury, right? They've collabed with anime, they've collabed with other fighting games, they've collabed with Cristiano Ronaldo. I can't even say his name correctly, but you know who I'm talking about. So it's not too far out there. He can fit. Negan fit right into Tekken. Wasn't something we thought of, but he was perfectly part of our roster, and we had no issue with it, or at least I had no issue with it. So that's my second prediction. And Leon, I think this is a more out there pick, but not too far reaching. Just enough to where there is a chance. So if they do this, this would be awesome. I think it would be a win-win for all sides. People are going to get interested in Resident Evil who never played, and also people who play Resident Evil may try out Tekken. That's usually how these collabs work. It's about benefiting both sides, taking a chance necessarily, and I'm all here for it. Leon Kennedy. Now, so that we've gone over my two personal predictions of who may be joining the roster, I wanted to dive into the highly requested predictions. Starting off with Kiryu, I think his full name is Kazuma Kiryu. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from the Yakuza series. So I'm not too familiar with the games, but I've definitely been aware of the entries over the last decade or so. He seems to be more of a brawler based style, and it's usually around like some cities, and it's clan is involved with many different clans, and fighting between each other. So just purely off design and his fighting style, I can see him fitting right into Tekken. Again, like I mentioned before, Tekken's roots are martial arts, grounded martial arts. So if you can get someone like this into the game, who's very popular IP, right, been well known by a lot of the gaming community, he would fit in Tekken. It would bring a lot of eyes, and it's a win-win for both sides, right? I'm not exactly sure how the Yakuza series is doing right now as far as its popularity goes and player base. I know it's more single-player game, so it's a little different to really compare the two. But purely off the brawler style, hand-to-hand combat, and using a lot of his, kicks, wind-up kicks, uppercuts, hooks, you name it. I think it would be very refreshing having someone who's just purely hand-to-hand combat. As far as his aesthetic goes, the closest I could think of is kind of Victor from the roster, who has a clean suited John Wick look, very kind of serious, but for some of the clips I've seen of Yakuza, there seems to be a little more serious mixed in with some goofiness. So I would kind of love to have both of those areas kind of presented if he was to join our roster. Okay, so going to the next highly requested character, his name is no other than Baki Hama. There's even been a fan-made trailer made for this character in Tekken 8, or for Tekken 8, I should say. And he is from an anime or a manga series that's essentially just based around hands. Yes, just straight hands. He is, genetically gifted and talented, very strong, very buff, and I believe he starts out, from high school, from the initial point of the series. For somebody who are not aware, it's a very visceral, very aggressive, very gruesome and goofy way of style they have for the universe. Okay, I'll give you a heads up if you ever go to check out this series. Okay, it is a bit gruesome. It might be a little cringy to some others. I'm not personally a avid watcher of the series, but I've seen a few episodes to have a little idea. So a lot of people have requested him. The closest example or similar character would be Fakuran, right? He's a very buff, naturally, just out there character, right? He has lightning, he's over the top, he's just like everything's breaking, destruction. That's kind of what Baki is, right? It's a little, they're ridiculous. Their strength doesn't make no sense at all. Like, so don't even think of common sense or science, none of that, just pure strength. Okay, and ridiculousness. So in that regard, I kind of see that fitting to Tekken. Tekken's always been kind of a goofy game. Doesn't really take themselves too seriously. Obviously some characters are more serious than others, but for the most part, we're lighthearted and we have fun as far as how these characters present themselves. So personally, I'm not against it. Again, it's hand-to-hand martial arts. The world that this anime is taking place in is all about, being the best, similar to Tekken's storyline, right? About going to the tournament, the king of the Iron Fist, becoming the greatest fighter in the world. So there's a lot of similarities that line up with the Tekken universe, ironically. So I wouldn't be too mad at this pick. A lot of people have been saying this name, throwing it out, throwing it out. So we will see. I don't know if Baku will return, be in Tekken 8. Who really knows? It's all up in the air at this point, and we will see. Okay, so if you made it this far, this is my last prediction of who may be joining the Tekken 8 roster. I will say this is a bit out there, and it actually wasn't a thought of mine initially. It was actually one of my, good friends, Diego, who's an avid fan of the Kingdom Hearts series. He was like, man, what if it's Sora? And I'm like, nah, not a chance. I'm like, what Sora? Kingdom Hearts? And then I kind of thought a little more about it, right? When you look at some of what Sora's moves are, I'll get into the other things, but Noctis, for example, from Tekken 7. For somebody who aren't familiar, he's from the Final Fantasy series, and a lot of his attacks have to do with multiple hitting slashes, right? Whether it's in the air, whether it's in the ground, and kind of just throwing it, gets to the opponent, gets right in, and Sora has a lot of that. He's in the air a lot with his key blades. He has a lot of different variations of them as well, and he's kind of one of those very strong characters, and not only is his universe, but across the board in any universe, right? Sora is a very popular, very iconic character that's been known for many decades, very loved, and I would be all here for it. He's been in other games as well, so why not? Kind of just shoot something into the dark, something crazy, something creative, something left field that we wouldn't even think of. So yeah, there's also a game, right? Kingdom Hearts 4 being announced in the not so far future. Who knows? I think it would be pretty interesting if we were to see that Keyblade pop up in the next Tekken 8 trailer, don't you think? So I don't know. You guys kind of let me know what are some predictions or ideas that you think that may or may not work for Tekken, because at this point it is truly endless. We don't know. Tekken 7 showed that. We got Negan, we got Geese, who was a personal favorite of mine from the SNK series. So maybe we get Terry Bogard. Who knows? Maybe a different Richard Fighter character. Maybe not Akira. Maybe someone else. Maybe DOA. You guys let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.